Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Beaudreau, the Antiquities Act states regarding national monuments that, quote, the limits of the parcel shall be confined to the smallest area compatible with the proper care and management of the objects to be protected, close quote. Do you believe that the national monuments designated by President Obama, including Bears Ears National Monument in Utah, adhered to that limitation?
Yes.
Now, to be clear, every time the Antiquities Act is used to designate a monument, every acre of that monument becomes restricted, significantly restricted in its use. That means constituents in my state are restricted from certain types of use on every acre. So when designating the Bears Ears National Monument, were the objects to be protected identified on each and every one of the 1.35 million acres, an area nearly as large as the state of Delaware?
Thank you very much. As reflected in the proclamation by President Obama, there is a very sort of thorough description of the basis for the designation and the objects that were covered by the designation. Obviously, as with all monuments, part of the implementation of the management of the monument is the development of a management plan and participation in the governance. And, as I think you're aware, Senator, part of the innovations around the Bears Ears Monument were to provide for a very inclusive mechanisms for participation in the management of the monument for exactly those reasons.
But just to be clear, there was no inventory doing what I just described, identifying the objects to be protected in every one of the 1.35 million acres.
So respectfully, there is a huge body of evidence supporting the monument designation, including the resources within the monument to be protected.
Right. I note here that there is a significant difference between conclusory assertions and specifications of the sort required by the Antiquities Act, where presidents are required to make sure that monuments designated under that act are confined to the smallest area compatible. For the record, do you acknowledge that you'll uphold the fact that it is, in fact, the policy of the United States that public lands be managed in a manner that recognizes the nation's need for domestic resources, for domestic sources of minerals, food, and timber and fiber from the public lands, including the implementation of the Mining and Minerals Policy Act of 1970 as it pertains to public lands?
Yes, thank you for that question. And yes, if I'm confirmed, and once again, work with public land managers, including those at the Bureau of Land Management, we will work consistent with the law on multiple use and sustained yield.
Okay. Thank you. Do you believe that public lands, federal public lands, should be managed according to multiple use principles that allow for activities like grazing, mining, and energy extraction?
Yes, consistent with the broad mandate under the Bureau of Land Management, in my view, and if I'm confirmed, will continue operating under the principles of multiple use and sustained yield.
Do you believe President Biden's directive to halt oil and gas leasing is compatible with that statute?
And again, I'm not in the administration yet, but my understanding from the executive order is to pause oil and gas new leasing in order to allow for a broad review of the federal oil and gas leasing program, which Secretary Haaland has initiated and made clear is intended to be a inclusive, comprehensive process for the review of that program. And if confirmed,
federal law as it's written and federal regulations implementing them do in fact require regular leases to be done. I'm not aware of anything in the applicable legislation and regulatory framework that allow for those simply to be suspended. But in the brief time I've got left, I want to point out livestock producers in the West are fighting for space on the range every day. In my state, we're talking about approximately 5,700 wild horses and burros, while the appropriate management level calls for there to be only 1,900. It's about 3 times the acceptable limit, the acceptable amount. So tell me, how will you work to preserve the ability of producers to be able to operate and reduce horse and burro populations on the range?
Yeah, thanks very much for that question. I'm looking forward to becoming involved in a host of issues. Again, if I return to the Interior Department, I can't say wild horse and burros is my favorite issue. I appreciate how challenging it is, and yes, absolutely, Senator. I look forward to continuing to work with everybody, including you, on figuring out solutions, because it is a massive challenge for the department and BLM.
I appreciate that commitment, sir. I'd point out here, I understand, regardless of whether it's your favorite issue, or regardless of whether it's an issue that gets a lot of attention from a lot of people, in many of the communities I represent, this is everything to them. And this can mean the difference between their survival or their non-survival. This can mean the difference between whether they're able to make a living or not. So we are at the mercy, especially in federal public land states like mine, where the federal government owns 67% of the land. We're at your mercy. So I appreciate your commitment to this and hope you will make it a priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And please, I by no means meant to minimize the issue. I just was remarking on how difficult it is. And so thank you for the question.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Senator.